Hi everyone, welcome again to another podcast of Adrian's podcast Autism. This time is episode 8. So this time the topic is the acceptance in autism and how different societies see autism acceptance. So my name is Adrian again. As we know, I'm autistic. I was diagnosed at 3 years old. I have a special interest in Disneyland characters, costume characters, and fairy tales, something like that, and Japanese anime too. So, as we know that I was saying, part of my autism, I have OCD, anxiety disorder, emotional needs, and I socialize in a different way and get very obsessive with my special interests and stuff. So today again, I have Darragh Byrne as a guest speaker, a man from episode 2. So so Darragh, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for having me, Adrian. It's a real privilege to get to do another episode with you. I really enjoyed the last one that we did. I'm particularly interested in this topic. I think it's very, very important that we talk about acceptance when it comes to autism. Um, just to introduce myself, I work in Gheel Autism Services. I work in learning and development. So I do a lot of training, staff training, and trying to educate people around autism and practice and things like acceptance and acknowledging people's strengths and talents, so that we can provide the best service that we can. So, again, thank you very much for having me.
So our topic is about autism acceptance and how different society accept autism differently. Because every time when I think about the autism acceptance, I think there are a bit difference between inclusion and acceptance, where the where
Adrian, I just ask you a question there. I'm sorry to jump in. I just wondered, do you think that different societies accept autism differently?
yeah, so different society accept autism differently, I think. Like in some countries, they tend to think that to accept them is kind of to leave the way they are, and and maybe label them as they're autistic, so they have a different life. So that's kind of ending up them in, like I know in some society when they talking about autism acceptance, it's more about leave the way they are. So eventually they all end up going to special schools, going to a day center residential home, and while they're in these kind of path, there might be more kind of public facility they can use, like a priority pass or autism government benefits, or there are lots of beneficial from that area, and they get protected a lot, and and they get discount free travel, a lot of beneficial. But then in some country when they think about autism acceptance, they try to think like make them have to live the same like other people, like where they expect them to go to mainstream school and live like go to college, get a jobs and get married, live like others. And and I think unfortunately when society is just focusing on inclusion, they may not be benefit in any kind of autism benefit, or they don't get protected a lot. They expected to be very independent, and a lot of their difference might have to change because if they have to adapt and live in the society. But then when they are in a day center or residential setting, then in a way it's kind of like the society have to adapt them first. So different societies say differently. Some don't want to adapt them first because they don't want to make them special, so they can live like other people. While some society, they try to make them special and make them look too different. So in a way, they're so special, but they wouldn't. They would kind of have different rights, different. or 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 getting a special benefit which make them look special, and they may not have a chance to live like other people, things like that. So different societies see autism differently. While I know in some countries like Germany, one of the good thing is that when they talking about residential home or day center, I know they are for they aren't just for severely autistic people, they're also for high functioning or whatever needs people have. And and that's how I think.
How do you think Ireland? How would you rate Ireland in terms of its acceptance of autistic people?
Well, I would say somewhere in the middle. So basically what happened in Ireland is that in Ireland they'll be so focused on inclusion. So unless you're someone who's severely autistic, then yes, you would be more into the acceptance side of the acceptance of autism, where your difference would be accepted the way it is, and can use excuse like that because of your disability. They go to a special school, they go to day center, they get loads of autism benefit, loads of priority benefits, and they get they get they get protected a lot the way children does, and they tend to have a different right maybe, and 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 something like that. So like they may even have an autism ID card to get discount for entertainment plays or free travel. But then when you're high functioning, you are kind of expected to go to a mainstream school, educate like other students. Well, you might still get learning support and something like that, but you're expected to treat it like other kids of your own age, other people of your own age. You grow up together. So that way you have to follow a lot of the norms. But when you go to a special school, when you go on the path on special school and day center, because of your disability, you can be yourself, don't have to follow the norms. But then when you go into the mainstream society, yes, you do need to follow, you're expected to follow the norms. And like a lot of your difference will be eliminated, as people wouldn't as people in the society accept that too many cannot accept that differences, and it may look a bit inappropriate. And because Ireland is a country where you still have lots of norms, where everyone have to follow the rules, it's part of their moral standard. And I think in Ireland, then when you go into mainstream school, you don't get any excuse. You're just treated like other people of your own age, and and which isn't really fair on them sometimes. And then when they grow up, they are expected to get a job, have a family, and be socialized like everyone else. And it's a bit like life unfair for those paths when you're high functioning, but then when you're severe, then life is getting a bit fair to you. But I think life should be always try to be fair for everybody. And like when you go into a mainstream school, I've heard cases where sometimes when a student has a disability, they have problems like with write, writing and like taking notes in class. Sometimes if they need some support like DSNA do it for them, they might judge as lazy, and some teacher may not like it because some teachers think that they're laying back and they're not taking responsible for their age, when that's not that can't be when that's not okay. Because basically when a special need person needs someone to take notes because they have some coordination problem, or they take notes too slow, and that's the way they are, like you cannot change about that. So they do need an SNA to write it for them. But then And this isn't about being lazy. This about disability accommodation. That's just like someone on a wheelchair. You wouldn't judge them as inappropriate or they're being lazy, not walking, because they cannot really walk, so they need a wheelchair. So that one is a bit like an autistic wheelchair. So I think Ireland is some kind of somewhere in the middle, and but I think other, but I think it's just that different countries work differently. Like some countries, they're too focused on or acceptance, where they might say like leave the way they are, or or kind of defends them, protect them a lot, and excuse them a lot of their behavior. And when they go into the public, they get the priority pass. So in a way, it's kind of making having a different right for them. But where in Ireland, the government want to have the same right for all people, regardless of your disability or not. And so that way, sometimes your difference can be eliminated. And and at the same time, when you were a child, they try to change you as much as possible. So when you're adult, they can see where you're at. And their goal is to try to, they think, is to get you out of your world, as they sometimes think it's a burden, which it shouldn't be, and trying to live like other people. But unless you're severely, that's different. So I think that's what Ireland is like.
Okay.
So what do you think acceptance means for you?
In my experience, Adrian, I suppose I'm speaking as somebody who isn't autistic, but I'm someone who's a lot of experience of working in a service that supports autistic adults, and I have acquired some knowledge in the area, and I have some experience in the area. But when I think about acceptance, um, I think that general society still has a long way to go in understanding and accepting autism. I think we've come a long way. I think things have improved. I think if you ask people on the street now, what do they um, know about autism, what do they understand about autism, they'll give a much better answer than they did 5 or 10 years ago. So there's much more awareness now, which has improved things. We also have created platforms for autistic people to be able to educate everybody else about what autism is. And you're doing that exact thing right now, Adrian, with this podcast. You're educating people. And it's that education that helps people to understand. Because I think people find things difficult to understand or to accept when they don't understand something. The more they understand about something, the more willing they are to accept it. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. The more people understand about autism, the more that we will see improved acceptance. But acceptance is only one step to making life better for autistic people in Ireland. We need to understand autism. We need to accept that it's there. We need to acknowledge differences. And you made that point earlier, Adrian, that autism is just one word that you could describe, use to describe a person. There are lots of other words that you could use to describe them. You know, you could talk about all the things that they're good at, all the things that they're interested in, and those are equally valid descriptions of that person as the autism is. It's just one part of them. Um, so the more that we understand and acknowledge and accept difference, the better, because everybody has different skills and strengths that they can bring to this world. We don't want a world in which where everybody thinks the same way and acts the same way and talks the same way. That would be boring. We need to encourage people who are different to speak up and speak out about being different and what makes them different and why are they proud to be different. And we should be promoting people who are different, because our society will be better if we talk about difference in a much more positive way. Autistic people are some of the most creative people that I've ever met. They are so talented. They have many, many strengths. They are able to see solutions to problems in a different way, so they can think outside the box. They're very loyal. They're very honest, very caring individuals. And I think that's the way we should talk about autism. We should talk about all the positive things, Unfortunately, the way autism is spoken about in society is still quite negative. It's still seen as something negative, and I just don't see it that way. I don't see autism as a negative thing. I don't see autism as a bad thing at all. I see it as an individual who has differences, yes, but those differences should be embraced and understood and accepted, and that an autistic person in Ireland should have access to the exact same rights as everybody else, and be given opportunities to live the life that they want, and they should not be um, uh, hampered in any way because they have autism. So when it comes to things like employment and education and having relationships and living a meaningful life, I think that being autistic should not be a barrier to that. Yes, there might be some small accommodations that we might need to make to ensure that people can achieve the same things, but none of those things are big or are going to cost a lot of money or are going to be difficult to achieve. They're not. They're very, very small things that we need to do, and a big part of that is understanding and accepting that autism is there. um, I think there's a movement now towards terms like neurodiversity and people who are neurodivergent, and accepting that there are different ways. And there are lots of different ways in which a person can be neurodivergent, like autism is one, ADHD you mentioned, dyspraxia, dyslexia,
OCD,
dyscalculia, OCD, anxiety,
schizophrenia,
some
and
mental
other.
health issues,
Yeah.
exactly, mental illnesses. Those are loads of different ways in which a person can be different. Um, but we need to acknowledge that they're just differences, and people just need small accommodations. But what they really need is someone to understand them and accept them. Because,
Yeah.
like I said, we don't want a world in which everybody is the same. So I would like to see an Ireland where we don't talk about the things that people can't do, we talk about the things that they can do, and we give them opportunities to live a life that they want and provide them with the
Yeah.
same opportunity. Adrian, I'm just interested to know what more do you think society could do to promote acceptance of autism?
Well, in my perspective, I think acceptance is more about leave the way they are. For example, if they were moving strange, you should just leave the way they are and try to educate the public about why they do that. The reason why people with autism have strange ritualized behavior, compulsive habits, or strange repetitive movement, or any strange movement, or any strange things they have. That is all to do with some kind of reduced anxiety, or they do that way to make them comfortable, just like the way why babies need to suck dummies or something like that, or why some religious cultures they do a specific things, and it's just the same for the autistic world. And because that's their disability, it shouldn't be seen as something bad. It should be seen as just their disability wheelchair. That's including like adult holding figurines in the public, or adult woman holding cuddly toys. And for the ritualized habit, that's just the way they are, because behind there's some behavior reason for that. Maybe, for example, if they flap their arms, they're trying to get the feel of the air as they need that. Or sometimes they feel like if they, before going to the room, like touching the figurines or stomping the floor, and then they go into the room, they think that's the way they go into the room. That's the way they want to do those feelings, to have a bit of comfortable before going into the room. So it's all kind of very. So now it may look very unusual and very strange, but that's just the way they are. So there are behavior behind though. Or like even though sometimes when there are crowds party, they look very sad, but that doesn't mean they're sad. They just don't want to show it out, but they're still very happy. So so or say sometime before touching one thing they do another thing. So if we just accept the behavior and just explain about what's the behavior behind, then that way the society can look at different perspective and know that what they're doing, and they it's part of the coping mechanism, anxiety reducing or brain mechanism or some kind of the ritualized habit, and and it should be leave the way it is. Now, unless if there are harm, you can try to replace the behavior to reduce the harm, maybe. And it's so that's called risk assessing sometimes. And I think people with disability should also have a special right so they can access to public facilities. Like when I go to Disneyland, take pictures of the characters, I really need to touch the characters to make me feel happy, comfortable, and to spend time spend time in the world with them, and so that way when I was there last summer, I used the special need pass, where if I have special need, I show them my ID card. I get the special need pass to skip the queues, the priority pass to get pictures and hugs from the characters. So I get to do that more with the characters, and that's kind of make me so happy and loads of fun, and it's kind of a special interest that I engage with. And sometimes with the obsession, you should leave it the way it is unless it's too bad or something. And and it's just my special interest, and I think this is something that the I think this is something that the Japan has do so far, like with the autism acceptance, where they accept the way they are. They tell people that about why people with mental disorder behave that way, and they don't cure them. They accept the way they are. They try to help them so they can seek their value and stuff. And even though when they go into the public, they get a free. I've heard they do get some kind of like a free passport or free book where they get free counseling or using public facilities like discounts from entertainment plays, government benefits. They get loads of protection and defense, and and sometimes if they're strange and say if there's something going on, they just show that they have a disability. So people just say, "All right, we let you the way that you are," or skipping queues in some places like theme park, entertainment places, priority. So I think it would be great that if other countries could do. Now I do know that some society they might think that you're trying to infantile this individual and and you're making them so special, and it's not right to do that, or it may look inappropriate, but I think that's wrong because you're just facilitating someone who has a disability, because I think people with disability does are more vulnerable than children, so they do need loads of protect acceptance and more defense, something like that.
So Japan does it well, and there are other countries that you've traveled to that you felt had very good acceptance of autism and very good public services and so
Yeah.
on. Um, how do you think Ireland does when it comes to, or what more could Ireland do?
Yeah, so I think Ireland we're still somewhere in the middle, so I think it would be great that, to be honest, when I use the public facility, people attitude are so nice, to be honest. Like for example, every time when I go into the entertainment place, I get discount due to my special needs. Even though, unfortunately, in Ireland, when it's coming to age, people still have the stereotype or such assumption that Santa toys or costume characters are just for little kids, while adult can't enjoy. But just the Christmas gone, even though I'm an adult or a young person with autism, I I still got to meet Santa last Christmas. Due to my special need, I showed them the ID card, and I even got it for free. And eventually, they treat me just like other kids, which I really enjoy, and I think should be the way it is. As disabled people are a bit like children except much vulnerable than kids. And or say in the airport I get the priority pass while free passing the line. The the security this time, they were so friendly with me that they weren't like the traditional one where you go through the security. They all look very strict and scary. Now, the reason the traditional one they do that because it's for the security issue. They don't want people to smuggle drugs, things like that, which autistic people like us don't do usually. So when we use the priority, they know that can really scare us, so they try to be very friendly, calm, and help us through. And they even have my and they even like having my mother to help me out, and they weren't too harsh anymore, so things get quicker done. Things gone a bit much easier, and even though I might look a bit strange with having toys on my hands which I need, or sometimes strange movement, they don't even bother with that anymore. So they don't see you like a criminal suspect anymore when you use those kind of paths. Or like in or like in some places I get the priority pass to skip lines. I get discounts with my ID card, free travel, or something like that. Or like in Kilkenny, they even did much nicer was that we found an autism parking where if you have autism, you get a special parking, and when you park there, you you get to you get to you get a quieter space, and sounds like you have more space there, and that's kind of all your world, all your space. So it'll be much easier for you. So Kilkenny done a very great job with acceptance, and the people attitude was so nice in Kilkenny towards autism. And they even have a policy now that after 9, they want to keep the town so quiet to be friendly for autistic people to go out. So in a way, I think Kilkenny is the friendliest county in the whole Republic of Ireland. And and I think usually when you're in a smaller town or village, people can do something like that as they have time. So what do you think, Dara?
Um, I think it's nice to hear you say that your experience has been that Ireland is very friendly and people do accept and people do understand, and you had a lovely experience in Kilkenny. I don't think anywhere is perfect. I think there's always more that we could be doing. I do think it comes down to understanding the reason behind some of the behaviors, let's say, or some of the presentations that you might see. And I like that you said earlier that we shouldn't judge people's behavior. If somebody finds if somebody is becoming overwhelmed or becoming quite anxious, then if they use let's say, for example, you use the cuddly toy example or something like that. If that's going
Or the
to,
steam toys?
yeah, if that's going to calm the person down and help them to regulate and deal with their anxiety, then people should accept that, and they shouldn't just look at it as, oh God, this is an adult. They shouldn't have Disney figurines. They shouldn't have cuddly toys. If it works for the person, then that's all that matters, and that we should just leave our judgments to one side and see it as something that helps the person. Adrian, you mentioned some areas where Ireland could improve already, but I just wondered, do you think that there's any further areas where we could improve our acceptance of autism?
Yeah, I think that's come to like, I think we need to talk about more. I think in school settings a lot, yes. For example, unfortunately, when you go into the mainstream school, a lot of times in some public mainstream school, kids are still expected the same like other students, which is not right. For example, they expected to hand in their homework like everyone else, or learn like everyone else, or 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 even they don't even get any kind of excuse just because of their autism, for instance. I heard some case where someone with ADHD chewing gum helps them, but the school doesn't allow it due to the free chewing gum policy. And that's really not working for her. And when she needs it, she gets in trouble for that, which I don't think is very fair. Or the other thing is, some someone there have been loads of people saying that sometimes when their kids in school, they need someone to help them to write down their homework or do some writing for them. They would be judged as being lazy or not doing their work right or not growing up and taking responsibility. But like you have to know that that person is autistic. He should be excused for that. Because when he isn't writing or something, that's nothing to do with lazy because he cannot cope that fast, so he needs some support with that. That's just like about what I talk about the wheelchair, about you can't just say someone is lazy on a wheelchair. The reason someone is on a wheelchair because they can't actually walk and they need some support in that. That's just the same policy with the autism and the disability facilities. And and other than that, I think there's still sometimes there's still bullying in other side of society where they still get judged of their difference. They might even told to stop being inappropriate. That's like have to grow, have to be responsible like others. But like due to their disability, you cannot just say like you cannot say that you cannot just treat them the same. Like they should be given a bit of excuse to help them. And 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 like I think there should be more protection and defense for those who have loads of difficulty in their life and a bit of excuse and and like for example for those who have emotional distress there should be more support for them to help them to express themselves without being judged, and after expressing themselves no matter how bad it is just say all right he's just expressed himself, put it down, everything should be fine. And and they should be protected a lot by the society, which they haven't yet due to a lot of the discrimination I heard and some sort of bullying, or maybe in some society there have been still some criminal justice issues when it's coming to autism. But I think there should be change for that, where they should be seen as vulnerable people, so they need some more protection and stuff. And and I think that no matter how high or severe functioning you are, I think once you're autistic, you are always vulnerable, and you should be able to access to something like a day center or residential service, even though you look like high functioning, but you need more of those support, which we're kind of moving towards it. What do you think about Ireland? About the acceptance in autism? I know that you do talk about you're more kind of in the middle between acceptance and inclusion, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So so if you just give your view more, please.
Um, I still think there's more we could be doing. I do. We have to recognize difference. We have to create equal opportunities. But I do think a lot of it comes back to education, and that's educating society so that
Yeah,
we can help people to accept it better. Because I think the reason that there's not more acceptance is because
yeah,
people don't understand
yeah,
autism. I think we should listen more to autistic people. I
yeah,
think we should give them a really big voice We should listen to them when it comes to government decisions and government policies. We should listen to people when it comes to education, and we should change our education system according to the feedback that we get from autistic people.
Yeah.
We should talk to employers about how they can, what sort of little changes can they do to their companies that make it easier to recruit people who are autistic, because autistic people have a lot that they could contribute to almost all organizations. So I just think we need to do a little bit more, and I think that will make a lot of difference.
Yeah. So yeah, so as I can see the time, I think it's a really great topic about talking about the autism acceptance, that different society accept them differently, but I think there should be more acceptance. And but I think in Ireland people are more focused on inclusion, but we're getting to the acceptance where we want to find balance. While some countries they're just focused on all acceptance and all inclusion. But I think it would be great to be somewhere in the middle, and but I would be more in the acceptance areas. So before we wrap up, we would like to see is there any question for us?
So my name is Kira. I'm a social care worker in Gheel Autism Services as well. And I just have a question based on what you spoke about today. So I'm wondering how old do you think you should be when you learn about autism?
I think once they were born and when they were young, they start learn because once the person born, they are learning. So when they start learning, that's when you have to tell them about autism and why they do that, and you need to keep on explaining while they grow up. Because I think if you just explain it in a specific age, that will make it a bit misunderstanding. So I think once they're born, you once they're learning, just like when you teach babies once they were born how how to speak or something, you do teach them at a very early age. So I think early age is much important. So teach them at a very early age, and once they were born and they're learning, then do teach them. And so that way when they grow up, they have more understanding of it and learn to accept the difference.
Great, thank
What
you.
do you think, Dara?
I agree. I think children grow up to be adults. So the earlier that we can talk to children about difference and diversity, the better. And I think that's going to happen in school. So I think there should be, I think parents should be talking to their children. I think teachers should be talking about it in schools, about recognizing difference and accepting difference, and treating everybody um, the same, and treating everybody equally, and recognizing people's skills and talents. And I think if we did that, then we'd see less, of the issues that happen when people grow up.
Yeah,
Just another question that sprung to mind when you were speaking about secondary schools. I often think secondary schools are hard enough without being um, different in any way. And I was just wondering how could we reduce the amount of bullying for autistic people in our schools?
yeah, yeah. So I think I think in all school even, or even in college, I think if we raise about the autism awareness, acceptance, or maybe have a bit of lessons about what is autism to the kids. And now I do know that there have been some mainstream schools say that they did that. It's like making an example out of the kids, but that's not making an example out of the kids. You're trying to tell other kids to know about autism. Because say even though those who try to hide all this or try to be normal and hide everything, sometimes the difference may leak out, and if others don't know, then would you and someone don't understand about autism, would you rather be judged that way, or would you rather be someone know about your autism so whenever your difference leak out you wouldn't be judged? So I think the education is really important, and we need teachers to be trained and educate back the kids about what is autism, and be accepting of the differences, and and kids, and there should be some activities going around, or maybe even when kids are learning to read, or when they're having a story time, they could have something like an autism story, something like that. So, and sometime if the teachers could even inform the kids about there might be some autistic kids in our class, so make sure if you see anyone with support or very different, do not bully or judge, and take bullying very seriously. And that's the way I would put it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So thanks again everyone to listen to our podcast. So we're running out of time. So that's our episode 8 for our podcast. And if you have any question, do leave it at the comment. We'll try to answer it. And thanks again, Darragh, to be in my podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Adrian.
Yeah. So
Thank you, Kira, for those great questions.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.